Right, good morning, and welcome to day 11 of this electrical safety specialist course. Today we will be starting module number 5, selection of personal protective equipment based on the discussion we have in the last class. In the last class, we discussed about how we will be carrying out the shock risk assessment and arc light risk assessment, and the outcome of those risk assessment are to determine the boundaries and then to determine um, the personal protective equipment required to carry out the job. So identify the shock and arc flash hazard personal protective equipment requirement, examining the shock and arc flash hazard PP, determine the appropriate NFPA 70E tables for use, select a complete PP system based on equipment and task provided. So here in this one, we are discussing about this hierarchy of risk control. Last session or last lecture was more about administrative control, in which we also talk about completing your energized electric work permit, job briefing, job planning, and risk assessment part as well. So if you look into the table 130.7 C15C, which is based on PP category method. So category 1 refers to R-rated clothing minimum of 4 cals per centimeter square. PP category 2 refers to R-rated clothing minimum of 8 cals per centimeter square. PP category 3 refers to R-rated clothing selected so that the system R rating is minimum of 25 cals per centimeter square. And PP category 4 is minimum of 40 cals per centimeter square. So this you can find from table 130.7 C15C. So any employee who is exposed to electrical hazard when the risk associated with that hazard is not adequately reduced by applicable electrical installations requirement shall be provided with and shall use personal protective equipment that is designed and constructed for the specific part of the body to be protected and for the work to be performed. Article 130.7 talks about the PP requirement which are intended to protect person from arc flash and shock hazard. Again, you can see that 70E is not referring any type of the personal protective equipment against arc blast hazard. While some situation could result in burn to skin, even with the protection selected, burn injuries should be reduced and survivable. Due to the explosive effect of some arc event, physical trauma injuries could occur. The PP requirements of 130.7 do not address protection against physical trauma other than the exposure to thermal effects of an arc flash. So if there is another thing related to, because we know that during an arcing event, there are some poisonous gases are also there, um, or there is huge pressure waves are released, which can cause other than the skin burn. Those type of the things is not been covered by 70. Some people I have seen that they are using some mask, oxygen mask and other thing as well, and they are performing the job in high critical area. But those type of the personal protective equipment or the things are not still not uh, covered in 70. Okay, so those are the generic personal protective equipments are covered here, which includes protection against shock hazard. So rubber insulating gloves, leather insulating gloves, or for rubber insulating gloves and the leather insulating gloves in combination will going to provide you protection against both. Will going to provide against protection against arc flash and shock personal protective equipment as well. If you look into the table here of personal protective equipment, just a second, please. We look into 130.5G. The rubber insulating gloves with leather protector provide arc flash protection in addition to the shock protection. So if this combination is being used by the qualified person, then he will be protected against both shock protection as well as arc flash protection as well. Similarly, this table 130.5G will be used when we are using an incident energy analysis method, and when we are using a PP category method, then we will use 130.7C. Yep, C15C. So if you look into this table as well, you can find similar type of the thing written. That rubber insulating gloves with leather protectors provide arc flash protection in addition to the shock protection. The higher class rubber insulating gloves with leather protector due to increased material thickness provide increased arc flash protection. Okay, so this combination will going to provide more and more arc flash protection. Or if you are only working on a location in which shock hazard does not exist, only arc flash hazard exists, so you can have a heavy duty leather heavy duty gloves which is an arc rated or an arc rated gloves as well. Then an arc rated pant or jeans, arc rated shirt, uh, your face shield with helmet or your hood, dielectric shoes, tools, insulated tools. Those are basically the personal protective equipment which are covered in this article. So 130.7C 130.7 article says that even you are wearing the complete gadget, still there is a chances of getting injured, but the level of the injury will be reduced to and the main target is to make it survivable. So for head protection, it talks about that the head area need to be covered if we are working in on the system which is less than 12 cals per centimeter square. For example, again, if we go into table, so table says that you can use an arc rated face shield or an arc flash suit hood. So there is a selection required. On the another one, it says that either use an arc rated flash suit hood as a complete or arc rated face shield and arc rated black cover. So this combination is allowed when we are selecting PP still PP category 2. From PP category 3 and 4, only suit hood is allowed. Arc flash suit hood is allowed. Arc flash suit hood is allowed. It's not allowing this particular combination for PP category 3 and PP category 4. Similarly, if we look into 130.5G, right, 130.5G says that if you are working from 1.2 to 12 cals per centimeter square, this combination can be used. Arc rated face shield, an arc rated balaclava, or an arc flash suit hood is required. So SR selection required. Above 12 cals per centimeter square, only arc rated arc flash suit hood is mandatory requirement. So if you are working by seeing the picture, you can say that the person who is exposed to the incident energy is not more than 12 cals per centimeter square. Eye protection is required. Face, head, and neck, chin, all those protections are required. So complete protection for head is required when it is within the arc flash boundary as shown below. The combination of arc rated face shield and black cover is different from full arc rated hood on the right. Then hearing protection is must, that when you are working inside the arc flash boundary, the hearing protection is must. body protection required for exposure above 1.2 cals per centimeter square. But if you think that if a person is working on less than 1.2 cals per centimeter square, but still there is a chances of getting injured or burned, then you can also use an uh, uh, body protection for them, even at less than 1.2 cals per centimeter square. But 70E make it compulsory that if you are working on a system where an incident energy is more than 1.2 cals per centimeter square or is equal to 1.2 cals per centimeter square, then at least PP category 1 or 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 an accredited clothing which have arc rating of more than 1.2 cals per centimeter square should be used. Then about head and arm protection is used for both shock and arc flash. Second, foot protection serve as a secondary protection. Wear foot protection, so it could be dielectric shoes as per the requirement, or leather footwear. It's also acceptable here. Here in D it says footwear other than leather or dielectric shall be permitted to be used, provided that it has been tested to demonstrate no ignition, melting, or dripping at the estimated incident energy exposure. So this is more related to providing protection against an arc flash event. Then about some other requirements related to arc rated underwears. Those are not mandatory to be an arc rated. Normally, cotton underwears, those are non-melting, but flammable garments can be used as undergarment. But melting and flammable garments cannot be used, which are made of silk or any other type of the material are not allowed to be used as in underwears. So you cannot wear multiple garments under your PPs, because maybe due to heat it will going to melt and then it will going to stick to the skin and body and will going to continue to give you burns. Then it talks about the zip up. Zip up sleeves must be fastened at the wrist. Shirts must be tucked into the pants, and shirts and coveralls and jacket must be closed at night, because if we are not zipping up, then we are allowing some open spaces, and due to those open spaces, enough energy can enter into our body. So let's see one video related to this one. Tuck button and roll, I think. Yep, this is the one.
Minute presented
It's
by
audible.
This is an Arc Flash Safety Minute presented by eHazard.
The video is audible or not?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
OSHA 1910-269 and NFPA 70E both mention tucking in your shirt before you do energized work. This is a change, but the change is there because we want to make sure no energy gets up underneath the shirt. There are two reasons for that. Number one, we want to make sure that we don't ignite a cotton t-shirt that may be underneath the shirt. And the other reason is those hot gases, if they come up underneath your shirt, they'll actually burn the exposed skin. We like to call this tuck, button, and roll. So you tuck the shirt in, button up your button, roll down your sleeves, and button them. That way, there's no exposed skin in the areas of your body. eHazard, taking the flash out of electrical safety.
You can find number of videos on the eHazard website, as well as those videos are also available on YouTube. So they have made the small clips, the small videos, all I have put here for training purpose and awareness. Then the outerwear, the garments which are worn over an arc rated clothing must be made of an arc rated material, but they are not mandatory to be equivalent to an arc rating. For example, if I'm wearing some jackets uh, due to weather, so it's not a mandatory requirement that I will be wearing a jacket of 40 cals per centimeter square if that is not making a part of my complete system, arc rated clothing system. Okay, so the jacket could be of 4 cals per centimeter square or 8 cals per centimeter square, because the main purpose of that outerwear or the jacket is to provide me protection against cold weather or it's a rain wear if I'm using. So the garments worn over an arc rated clothing must be made of arc rated material, but it is not mandatory requirement that it is equivalent to the exposure level. So maybe you are exposed to 24 cals per centimeter square. So it is the requirement of the personal protective equipment or the arc rated clothing which you are wearing to provide you protection against 24 cals per centimeter square. It's not the job of the jacket to provide you protection. Then let it breathe, leave some space. Loose fitting clothing provides additional thermal insulation because of air space. Make sure arc rated clothing fits properly and does not interfere with the work task. So it says that do not use fit uh, fit clothing or it uses a word loose fitting clothing, because we have seen that if we are being able to create a distance in inches, the incident energy decreases very drastically. So if you are working at an 18 inches distance or if you're working at 24 inches, the incident energy is different. Similarly, if we are wearing some loose clothing as compared to any fit type of the clothing, so within our body we are creating a bit of space, air space, and that will also be helpful uh, in uh, in giving us more protection. So maybe due to this we might be our arc rated clothing will going to perform well. For example, if I'm using an arc rated clothing of 12 cals per centimeter square and I'm using it as a tight fitting clothing, but if I'm using the same 12 cals per centimeter square and using it or as a loose fitting clothing, that same 12 cal per centimeter square suit can provide me protection against 14 cals per centimeter square or 15 cals per centimeter square of incident energy as well. So here it says that leave some space. Loose fitting clothing provides additional thermal insulation because of air spaces. Make sure the arc rated clothing fits properly and does not interfere with the work task. Then if the back of your head is in the arc flash boundary, you must wear an arc rated hood or arc rated black cover, which can which have a face shield attached to it. If the incident energy is greater than 12 cals per centimeter square, an arc rated hood must be worn. So less than 12 cals per centimeter square, it's allowed, the combinations are allowed. But if you are working on greater than 12 cals per centimeter square, then an arc rated hood is mandatory. Face shield must have a wraparound guarding to protect the face, chin, forehead, ears, and neck area. Safety goggles or glasses must also be worn under the face shield or hood. Heavy duty leather gloves or arc rated gloves must be worn for arc flash protection. If insulated rubber gloves are used for shock protection, leather protector must be worn over the rubber gloves. And the last one is heavy duty leather footwear, dielectric footwear, or both must be used for all exposure greater than 4 cals per centimeter square. So this is the requirement that either we will be using a heavy duty leather footwear, dielectric footwear, or both must be used for exposure greater than 4 cals per centimeter square. So because there is a chances of igniting the shoes and other things can go wrong. Then it talks about the PP care and maintenance in 130.7, that we should maintain the personal protective equipment. Okay, it need to be visually inspected before each use, and immediately following any incident, it should be stored in a manner to prevent the damages. This table, 130.7C14, they will going to ask questions in exam. You don't have to further deep dive into individual document number if it is not part of your job in your organization. How they will going to ask the question, in exam you will going to find question that for fall protection, NFPA 70E recommends which document number or which standard. So you should remember that there is one table with one in article 130.7. You will come here, you will see that for fall protection standard specification for personal climbing equipment, ASTM F887 is the requirement. For apparel, arc rated standard performance specification of flame resistance and arc rated textile material for wearing apparel for use by electrical worker exposed to electric arc and related thermal hazards. So ASTM F1506. For gloves, arc rated, these are the standard. These are the testing method which is acceptable. For gloves, leather, these are the ASTM standards. Okay, so for this table, you only need to know what the document number NFPA 70E refers to. Similarly, there is another table, tier 130.7G, which take into the consideration other type of the protective equipment like blankets, covers, insulated hand tools, ladders, line houses, sheetings, and other. So our document number is attached with those as well. So excuse me. So they were going to ask the question like for the plastic guard, which ASTM standard is referred. So we can look into ASTM F712 is there. Ladder for ladders, what type of the NC standards is being used, and other things. So you don't have to remember anything because you will be having your standard, original standard with you in the exam. So you just have to mark here. Similarly, 130.7 C7B, which talks about rubber insulating equipment maximum test intervals. So it talks about that how frequency you must electrically test your equipments in order to know whether it is working fine or not. Blankets before first use, then after every 12 month. Covers if insulating values are suspected. Gloves before first use, then every 6 months thereafter. Line houses if insulating values are suspected. Sleeves before first use, and then after every 12 months thereafter. So these are some testing requirements. 130.7D talks about other type of the protective equipment. Okay, so we have other type of the insulated tools which need to be tested. So inside, first, where they will be used inside the restricted approach boundary, rated for the voltage on which they are used, designed and constructed for the environment and manner in which they are used, and visually inspected before each and every use. So these are the mandatory requirements when we are using insulated tools and equipment. So fuse or fuse holders, handling equipment, ropes and hand lines, fiberglass, reinforced plastic rods, and portable ladders. Those need to be insulated when we are using them within the limited approach boundary as well. This type of the question you might going to face in an exam where it will look into the triangles. Double triangles mean that this tool is double insulated. Then it shows the voltage rating. So if the double triangle and the voltage rating is missing, okay, then this particular tool does not fulfill the requirements of NFPA 70 and cannot be used. Are these tools voltage rated as required by the NFPA 70? This type of the question might come in exam, so you have to look into those options. Okay, it's a double triangle is there, voltage rating is mentioned there. Yeah, this can be used as per 70. Okay, so these tools are voltage rated as required by 70. If we have a taping there, or we cannot see whether this tool is double insulated or what's the voltage level, so this type of the tool cannot be used as per the 70 requirements. Moving to 130.7E and 130.7F, alerting techniques and lookalike equipment. So 130.7 talks about some alerting techniques. So either we can use safety signs and tags as a part of our alerting techniques, or we can use barricades in order to prevent or limit the employee access to work area where the energized work is being carried out. Or we can place attendants there if there is an area where there is a high flux of people. So we can put attendants in order to limit the movement, or to make them aware that there is some task is being carried out there. So main function of the attendant is attendance will be there till the time the task is completed. Okay, so one of the responsibility of the attendants are there that they will going to stop people from entering those area where they might going to enter. Still, we have put signage there and barricades there, but people might tend to cross those areas. Then 130.7F talks about the lookalike equipment. So in one substation, if I'm working on transformer A, there is also transformer B is there. Transformer B is not in an electrically safer condition, but transformer A is. So how we will going to make sure that the people who are working in that particular substation knows about this, that only transformer A is in electrically safer condition and other is not. So all the alerting techniques which is covered in 130.7E, either if any one of that alerting techniques can fulfill the requirement, then apply one, or we can apply the combination of alerting techniques covered in 130.7 E1, 2, and 3 in order to make people realize about the hazards. Okay. Then 130.8 talks about other precautions for personal activities like alertness, that those people who are working in the area where the task has been carried out, they should be alert of the hazards which they are dealing with, and also they should be alert of any people or any unqualified person who can enter that particular area and can cause distraction to them. Then about the blind reaching. Blind reaching is said that the area which you cannot see yourself, you should not try to access that particular area. So one of the examples of the blind reaching is that if I'm trying to reach to some cabinets where the electrical wirings are there, but I cannot see it myself, but I'm trying to reach to those area through my hands or tools. So that will going to fall under the blind reaching. Illumination, a correct illumination is required to carry out the task. If the illumination is poor, we are not allowed to continue the task until and unless a proper illumination is provided. Then conductive objects. Conductive objects are not allowed to be carried out within the limited approach boundary, and they are not allowed within the restricted approach boundary. So if those conducted objects are in terms of the tools which you are using, or any conductive objects which you are wearing, so anything related to gold or or any fancy item, those are not allowed. Doors and hinge panel need to be secured tightly and safely, because due to the movement of those doors and hinge panel, there is a chances that that a person might going to fall over on the parts or on the live parts on which the task is being carried out. Clear spaces need to keep clear. So in some events of emergency fault, a qualified person who is working there can escape the area. So if the clear spaces are used for storing or stocking, then it will come in way, and the person will not be able uh, to to get out of that particular area safely. Housekeeping duties, again, it's referred to that only if you want to carry out this duties, and if it is being performed by the qualified person, then he is allowed to perform housekeeping duties within the limited approach boundary. But if this housekeeping duties are with the unqualified person and they have to perform housekeeping duties within the limited approach boundary, then you have to establish an electrically safe work condition for them. Anticipating failure is related to a qualified person, that when he is interacting with any electrical equipment, he should anticipate what could go wrong. He should know about the condition of the asset, and when the asset was maintained, whether the asset was maintained over the period of time or not. So he should anticipate those failures, whether there is some evidence of impending failure or not. Routine opening and closing of circuits. This if this is with the equipment which are considered to be in normal operating condition, or the equipment are in normal operating state, then this routine operating and closing of the circuits are normal operations. But if you doubt about the assets, whether the assets have been maintained, uh, or or whether there is some evidence of impending failure with those assets are there, then this routine opening and closing of the circuits will be considered as a energized work rather than a normal operation. Then reclosing circuits after protective devices open. So if this is one of the riskiest tasks, because once the device have opened, that means there was some failure there, fault was there, and if you have not checked the complete circuitry, if you have not identified, or if you have not found any fault, then reclosing circuits might result in another flashover or another fault, or it may be due to some transient faults which is being cleared when we are reclosing these circuits. So a reclosing circuit after protective device opens, it's one of the risky tasks which needs to be take to the consideration. Then safety interlocks. Safety interlocks should not be bypassed. Should not be bypassed. If it is being bypassed for a period of time in which a qualified person is performing any task, it need to be put back again, so that uh, the safety interlocks are not permanently removed from the equipment or the system. So if any changes is happening to your safety interlocks, this is the responsibility of a qualified person to update those changes on the single line diagram as well. So these are something which are covered in Article 130.8. Then moving to one question, the use of the mirror to see behind an obstruction is also considered a blind reaching. Yep, this is considered as a blind reaching as well. Then 130.9 work within the limited approach boundary or R-flash boundary of overhead lines. So we know that the overhead lines are live. They are not insulated. Okay, so a task which need to be carried out near those overhead lines should take some special precautions. So this one, the column 2 in the table is related to exposed movable conductors. Okay, so if I'm working on, if you are working on 132 kV, 240 kV, or 400 kV, we have a limited approach boundary in column 2, which we need to take into the consideration. So any equipment or any vehicle uh, which have a long beam should be kept out of at least this distance, or should maintain this distance. When on the ground or elevated near the overhead line, qualified person and the longest conductive object they may contact cannot cross the limited approach boundary. So if I'm using some truck, train, or some crane, sorry, and I'm operating at 132 kV or 240 kV, for example, so the beam of that crane should keep minimum distance of 13 feet. So normally in other standards, it's mentioned like 10 feet. You have to keep distance, but that is still certain voltage level. As the voltage increases, you have to adjust your distance accordingly. So 78 table provide you that distance, the changing distance as per the changing voltage level. So insulated and energized must be guarded, insulated, or precaution must be taken. If contact is possible, overhead line must be de-energized and visibly grounded. A qualified person must determine the insulating rating. Arrangement must be made with utility or other operator when you are performing some task near to overhead lines. Elevated vehicles or equipment must maintain an approach not closer than the limited approach boundary. Employees on the ground may not come in contact with the vehicles or equipment unless protective equipment or materials are used. Underground electric lines and equipment before excavation starts, where there is a reasonable possibility of contacting the electric lines or equipment, the employer shall take the necessary steps to contact the appropriate owners or authorities to identify and mark the location of the electric lines or equipment. When it has been determined that a reasonably possibility of contacting electric lines exists, appropriate safe work practices and PPs shall be used during the excavation. So if we are doing some underground excavation, we should mark the existing cable route. And if you are not sure, we can take the help of the utilities, uh, which are basically the network owners or the operator of that particular area, and then they will going to guide us what is the route on which the cables are there. And still if we are not sure, we can ask them to establish an electric saver condition for that particular area, so the excavation can be performed safely. Then 130.11, it's about the cutting and drilling into the walls. So we know that there are different type of the cables are running through our walls, fixtures which we cannot see. So our risk assessment need to be performed when we are taking when we will going to start these type of the work. So first you have to identify and mark the location of the conductors, cable, raceways, and equipments, or create an electric safe work condition, identify safe work practices and PPs to be used before doing cutting and drilling. Where conductors are de-energized in order to cut, remove, or reroute, and the conductor terminations are not within the site from the point of work, such as where the conductors are removed from the source of supply in conjunction or pull box. Additional steps to verify the absence of voltage or identify the conductor shall be taken prior to cutting, removing, or rerouting the conductors. So those are related to when we have given a task of removing some conductors, or maybe it's related to rerouting our overhead lines or underground conductors within the industry. Okay, you can find some type of the exam questions will be like this. Where justified energized work is permitted in a high traffic area and sign and barricades may not provide sufficient warning and protection for unqualified person. Does NFA 70 require additional steps to be taken? Yes, we have seen in 130.7E from 1 to 3. First, you have to use some signs there in 130.72. E2 talks about barrication, and E talks about placing an attendant. So right answer is B. Yes, 130.7 E3 requires an attendant to be stationed to warn and protect employees. Okay. Next one. Just give this a try. More than one answers are correct. Yeah, verify the last testing date, perform an ear test to check for holes, check the voltage reading, inspect the gloves or damage such as rips or tears. So all are correct. A, B, C, D, all four are the right options. So another type of the question related to selection of PPs. I've not heard that these type of the question have come, but it's good. One of the example I've taken from NFPA training. So there are 4 bags there. Okay, so within the 4 bags, they will going to ask whether all the PPs are complete or not. Let's select the first bag. So in the first bag, we have a coverall, we have a black rubber, we have overall, we have rubber insulating gloves and the leather insulating gloves. We have hearing protection and goggles are there. Face shield is missing, so we cannot use this bag for execution of the task because face shield is not there. So they might going to ask you this type of the question in exam, whether this fulfills the PP's requirements or not. Yeah, in question they mentioned the shoes are there. Select a gear bag and inspect it to determine if it contains all the required PP that Dave needs to perform his task. Assume Dave is already wearing leather footwear. Your inspection should include checking if items are acceptable, that is correct rating, no cracks, etc. Okay. So next one, it seems like all the things are present. Then we will going to check about its testing date. So it's June 2015. Okay, and we are assuming that we are working in 2018 because this example corresponds to that time. So it's June 2015. The PP has not been tested for last 3 years. Okay, so that cannot be used. On the other hand, if we are using another bag, if we look into this one, sorry, June 20 we are working. So here the last testing date is June 19th. So the PPs have been tested just before it, and the 3 years have not passed. So we can use that personal protective equipment, and all things and all PPs seems to be completed, and that's why we will going to select this bag or this gear in order to perform the task. Let's see bag number 4. So in this bag number 4, the black lava is missing, so we won't be using that one. So this type of the question you can expect in exam as well. Okay. Any questions on this one? All good. Okay, so by this we have completed our chapter number 1, or you can assume that we have completed 90% of our course content, because the 90% of the course is based on chapter number 1. So now it's your responsibility to go through the standard. Okay, so we have completed till 130.12, page number 41. Starting chapter number 2, safety related maintenance requirement, and chapter number 3, which are covered in our module number 6, a combined module. And okay, so module number 6 is related to safety related maintenance and special equipment requirements. So chapter number 2 is further divided into a number of articles: general maintenance requirements, substations, switchgear assemblies, 215 related to premises wiring, controller, fuse and circuit breakers, rotating equipment, hazardous location, batteries and batteries room, portable electrical tools and equipment, personal protective, safety and protective equipment. Those are basically the sub-subject areas of this chapter. So one thing we have to remember, that chapter number 2 of the 70E standard will not cover in detail the safety or the maintenance practices or the maintenance techniques which we have to use. Okay, so chapter number 2 is generic. It won't talk about that when you have to maintain your asset, or what type of the testing you have to perform at what test interval, etc. So new standard of NFPA 70B, which have been, I think, published recently. Previously, it was the recommended practice for electrical equipment maintenance. Now NFPA 70B has transformed into a standard for electrical equipment maintenance. From recommended practice, it has transferred into standard. So in that 70B, we will be having complete instructions, the process, the durations, etc. and etc. for maintaining electrical equipment. So chapter number 2 addresses the requirement that below. It basically covers the practical safety related maintenance requirement of electrical equipment and installation in the workplaces as included in 90.2. These requirements identify only that maintenance directly associated with employee safety. So chapter number 2 covers safety related maintenance requirement of electrical equipment and installation. So safety related maintenance requirement, this type of the maintenance will not going to cover the maintenance for increasing the uptime, availability, reliability of the asset. Yeah, if those are taking into the consideration the human safety, yes, then it will going to cover. Chapter number 2 does not prescribe a specific maintenance method or testing procedure. It is left to the employer to choose from various maintenance methods available to satisfy the requirements of chapter number 2. For the purpose of chapter number 2, maintenance shall be defined as preserving or restoring the condition of electrical equipment and installation or parts of either for the safety of employee who work where exposed to electrical hazards. Repair or replacement of individual portion or parts of equipment shall be permitted without requiring modification or replacement of other portion or parts that are in safe condition. So these are some of the generic requirements of chapter number 2. So what we have to keep in mind that this type of the maintenance is only take into the consideration the employee safety. So employee who perform maintenance on electrical equipments or installation shall be qualified person as required by chapter number 1 and shall be trained in and familiar with specific maintenance procedure and test required. So excuse me. So the chapter number 1 definition of qualified person is extended here. Now, previously, the definition of the qualified person only considered from the operation point of view. Now, the qualified person definition for chapter number 2 is extended what is required by chapter number 1. Now, in order to become a qualified person for maintenance activity, the person shall be trained in and familiar with the specific maintenance procedure and test required as well. This is the further requirement. 205.2 talks about single line diagram. A single line diagram where provided for electrical system shall be maintained in an legible condition and shall be kept current. So that's because we know that all our decisions and all the things related to the single line diagram are based on all the things related to logout and tagout and establishing an electrically safe work condition are dependent on our single line diagram. So single line diagram need to be updated and kept in the legible condition, updated condition and readable condition as well. 205.3 talks about general maintenance requirement. Electrical equipment shall be maintained in accordance with manufacturer instruction or industry consensus standards to reduce the risk associated with failure. The equipment owner or owner designated representative shall be responsible for maintenance of electrical equipment and documentation purpose. So electrical equipment shall be maintained in accordance with manufacturer instructions. So this is the main thing related to this chapter, that you have to maintain your electrical equipment as per the maintenance manufacturer's instruction. If you are not maintaining those things as per the manufacturer instruction, then you are not complying with the safety related maintenance requirement. So 205.4, what type of the maintenance are required? Overcurrent protective device must be maintained in accordance with manufacturer instruction or industry's consensus. It should be performed by a qualified person. It should be documented. Equipment owner or owner designated representative is responsible for maintenance of overcurrent protective device. So who is responsible for carrying out the maintenance? Either the equipment owner or the owner designated representative, either the client himself who is the owner of the facility and the equipment, or if the client have outsourced this maintenance activity to other organizations, so they are responsible for carrying out those maintenance activities as well. 2055.5 talks about those working spaces or clear spaces. So these spaces around electrical equipment are there for safe operation. So a person can come and perform the operation safe. These spaces are not left there for storage purpose or any other purpose. So these need to be maintained as per the standard. So all working area and clearance required for electrical core and standard shall be maintained. The adequate working space allows employees to perform tasks without jeopardizing their safety. Sufficient clearance allows the proper use of tools and equipment while preventing inadvertent contact, which could result in an electrical incident or the energy. Then grounding and bounding, because we know that those grounding and bounding are are important for equipment safety as well as for the safety of the person who are working around. So this need to be part of our maintenance program, that we are checking our grounding and bounding activity, whether those are being maintained over the time or not. 205.7 about guarding of energized conductor and circuit parts. So if the conductors are insulated, or if are being guarded, so that there is no unintentional contact with exposed energized conductor or circuit part are there. So we need to make sure that those guard are always in place. It has not been removed by any other person. So those are there in order to provide protection to the employees who are working around those parts. So those need to be part of our maintenance program as well. So we are developing a maintenance program based on 70 chapter number 2 requirements. So there will be another maintenance program will be there, which will talk about how you will going to maintain those equipment. Okay, so that is one of the maintenance program. Another maintenance program is like this: how we will going to ensure that employees are safe. Then it talks about the safety equipment. Locks, interlocks, and other safety equipment shall be maintained in proper working condition to accomplish the control purpose. Clear spaces, access to working space and escape passengers shall be kept clear and unobstructed. 205.10 about the identification of the components. So on the single line diagram, or on the actual, if there is some tagging, tagging is there for equipment identification or the component identification, those tags need to be maintained. So if the cable is running from one point to another point, so a component need to be identified, whether this is a cable, what is the rating of this cable, where it is connected and where it is going, etc. So those components need to be maintained physically as well as on the single line diagram as well. Component identification. 205.11 talks about those warning signs. If we are putting those warning signs or labels here as per 70E requirements of NEC, so those need to be maintained in readable and legible condition. Identification of the circuit of voltage identification shall be securely affixed and maintained in updated and legible condition. So what is the circuit voltage level, what is the name of the circuit, etc. 205.13 single and multiple conductors and cables. The electrical cables and electrical cables, single and multi conductors, shall be maintained free of damage, shorts and ground that would expose employee to an electrical hazard. So the cables need to be maintained in such a way that there is no crossing of those cables, and there is no heating of those cables due to close proximity, and which is derating the cable itself and causing some aging effect on those assets, which can cause some issues like damage, shorts and grounds. And it's about the flexible cords and cable. It should always be 3-pin. There it should be maintained properly. There should not be any damage, strain it should not be there. So those are the related things related to flexible cables and cords. Overhead line clearance, so there is vertical as well as horizontal clearance. So over the period of time, if due to sag, the vertical clearance have reduced, we need to take into the consideration, because if that vertical clearance is reduced, there is a chance that if any vehicle is passing by, that may come within the limited approach boundary. So for overhead electric lines under employer's control, grade elevation shall be maintained to preserve no loss than the minimum design vertical and horizontal clearance necessary to minimize risk of unintentional contact. Then Article 210 talks about some substations, switchgear assemblies, switchboards, panel boards, motor control centers, and disconnect switches. So keep this thing as generic, that all need to be maintained as part of the manufacturer recommendation. So if we talk about enclosures, area of enclosures, conductors, so all need to be maintained as part of uh, employer as recommended by the manufacturers. 215 talks about premises wiring, covers the wiring system component shall be in place with all associated hardware and shall be no unprotected openings. So all those wirings of the system it it should not be exposed open, so that there is no chances of unintentional contacts are there. For controller equipment, this article shall apply to controller including electric equipment that governs the starting, stopping, direction of motion, acceleration, speed, and protection of rotating equipment and other power utilization apparatus in the workplace. So this is basically applicable to if we talk about VFDs. So this article take into the consideration those things. So protection and control circuitry used to guard against unintentional contact with exposed energized conductor or circuit parts and to prevent other electrical or mechanical hazard shall be maintained. How you will going to maintain by as per the manufacturer recommendation. Fuses and circuit breakers. So this article 225 talks about that the fuses must be maintained free of breaks, cracks, or any visual damage. The fuses should not be replaced with fuses having higher rating. That is not allowed. If we are using a current limiting fuses, they shall not be modified with non-current limiting fuses in the system. So the current limiting fuses have the characteristic that enables the fuse to clear the fault to clear a fault very quickly with a minimum amount of energy released. So we need to take into the consideration those things as well, that fuse or fuse holder for current limiting fuses may not be modified to allow fuses that are not current limiting. Then it's about the circuit breaker. Most circuit breaker have specific maintenance instructions to ensure proper operations. So the circuit breakers must be maintained free of cracks in cases and or cracked or broken operating handle. So we are not allowed to use any broken handle for the operation of the circuit breakers, and the circuit breaker itself need to be maintained free of breaks and cracks. Then Article 230 is about the rotating equipment. So all the terminal boxes, enclosures, and terminal chambers are need to be maintained to guard against unintentional contact with exposed energized conductor and circuit parts and other electrical hazards. Guard barriers and access plates shall be maintained to prevent employee from contacting moving or energized parts. 235, it's about the hazardous location. No exposed energized conductors within the hazardous location where there is a chances of flame, ignition, or things like this. So if we have an exposed energized conductor just due to some arcing event or any event, it can turn into some catastrophic failure. So wrench type threaded conduit are allowed, not finger tight. So everything need to be tight from wrench using the tool. Intact and securely fastened bonding jumpers are need to be there. Bolted covers with all bolts tight, legible, and not exceed marking of luminaries for maximum lamp voltage and temperature rating. Secure and legible required marking. So if the lamp voltage is there for 100 watt or 60 watt or 50 watts, so we should not exceed the voltage level which is related to those luminaries. 240 talks about batteries and battery rooms. So batteries and battery rooms need to have proper ventilation system is there, and they need to have an eye wash and body wash apparatus there. So in case of any splages, we have eye and body wash apparatus are there. and the employee can use them. Why the ventilation is important ventilation system? Because in batteries and battery rooms there are combination of the gases are there, which may make some explosive type of the combination. So that's why ventilation system is the must requirement there. Article 245 about portable electrical tools and equipment. So there should be no breaks, cracks, or exposed energized conductor and circuit parts. No missing cover plates, no stray strands or loose terminals, no missing loose, altered, or damaged plates, pins, or contacts. Polarity must be correct for those portable electrical equipment and tools. And if we are using those portable electrical tools and equipment, we should ensure that we are using a GFCI with those. 250 article talks about personal safety and protective equipment. So there are a number of personal protective equipment are covered here, from ground equipment, hard sticks, rubber gloves, sleeves and leather protector, test instruments, blankets, insulating mats, protective barriers, external circuit breakers, portable lighting, temporary protective grounding equipment, dielectric footwear, protective clothing, bypass jumper, insulated and insulating hand tools. So these shall be maintained in a safe work condition. And if testing is required, they should meet the testing requirement as specified in the standard. So if the test interval required for example for gloves is 3 years, then it should be electrically tested before that time period. So the testing requirement, there is visual inspection requirement. So the visual inspection need to be taken into the consideration when we are performing task. So before starting a task, we should perform those visual inspection. Safety equipment and tools. Use appropriate tests before initial use to verify the safety and protective equipment and protective tools. And the final thing is related to personal protective grounding cable sets. So the inspections must be made at interval thereafter as the service condition require, but in no case the interval exceeds 1 year. So for every tools, protective tool, they have set a certain interval, test interval. What you will going to do, just read it and highlight those test interval. So for gloves, we know that it should be every 3 years. For blankets, there is different thing. And for other type of the protective tool, the testing duration is different. So safety requirements for special equipment. This is related to chapter number 3, which we will be covering in our next upcoming session. So we have covered chapter number 2 as well, and this is very small chapter. You can see in the standard only it comprises of chapter 4 pages. So it will start from page number 42. Controller, fuse and brakes, circuit breakers, and it will end on page number 45. So it's a small chapter and it's very generic. Okay. And you can expect only 3 to 4 questions from this particular chapter. And the final chapter is based on chapter number 3. From chapter number 3, there is expected to be around 10 questions coming in the exam. Yes, any questions up till now? Let me discuss the course outline for the exam from the CSP handbook. I think the CSP handbook is with you as well. If not, I will going to share again. So electrical safety program purpose and scope, documentation requirement, maintenance requirement is basically the chapter number 2, which we have covered. Safety, understand the safety related maintenance requirement for electrical equipment installation, identify maintenance impact on safety related work practices. This is chapter number 2. Other things are from chapter number 1, which we have covered. So this first session, electrical safety program, will going to constitute around 30%. Okay, so we have covered all those things. Module number 2 or exam domain 2 will going to cover safety related work practices, again from chapter number 1. This is from article 100. Then identify the methods for release for contact, understand emergency response requirements, risk assessment and arc flash hazards, personal protective equipment requirement, electrical hazards, and other equipment. So this personal protective equipment requirement we have covered today as well. So this completes our domain number 2. Electrical safe working condition. This is from article number 120, which we have already covered. Work involving electrical hazard. This is from article 110.4 and article 130 as well. So we have in the last session, yesterday session, we covered about energized selective work permit and identify the criteria for justification of energized work. This is 110.4. Requires the exemptions of energized work requirement, energized selective work permit exemptions, etc. So this is also covered. So 4 domain of the exam we have covered, which constitutes around 90%. So 1 domain is remaining, safety requirements for special equipment, which will going to constitute around 10% of the exam. So this is remaining, and this we will going to try to cover in our upcoming session on Wednesday, same time, which is around 7 p.m. I think, Saudi Arabian time. Right. Any questions or any clarification required? So we will be completing this course, inshallah, in this coming week. Okay, all good. Right. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. See you in next session. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.